EMAT, or Educating Minorities About Transplant, for the opportunity to speak tonight. Shirley, I really admire the work that you all are doing. You are, especially this month, I've been following the speakers, and you have really been shining the light on kidney disease. And it's just an honor to be among the guest speakers that have been speaking throughout the month of August. And not just in August, I mean, you're always sharing and shining the light on kidney disease and transplantation and the work that you all do. And so I just thank you for the opportunity to be able to come and be one of the guest presenters. And so today, I feel like my presentation will lend itself to anyone that's dealing with anything in life. And even in the landscape that we're currently living in. The title of my presentation is A Marathon, Not a Sprint. And I think anyone that has faced anything in life can attest to this phrase, that it is truly a marathon and not a sprint. It's not something that you just arrive and you get there quickly. It's something that there's a lot of different obstacles and things that you have to overcome, a lot of different curves and valleys and mountains and different things like that. So in sharing my story, I'm going to take it from that lens, that it is a marathon and not a sprint. And I feel that that is exactly what I experienced in going through this kidney journey that I've been on for the last over almost 20 years now. This is one of my favorite quotes. Life is a journey that must be traveled no matter how bad the roads and accommodations. And this is by Oliver Goldsmith. And so we don't always get to choose what happens to us. We don't always get to choose the conditions that we may encounter in life, but we still must live. We still must go on. And so we still have to walk this thing out, no matter what it looks like, no matter what the roads look like, no matter what the accommodations are. So I'm going to do a little bit of foreshadowing. I'm going to share my sister and I's story. It's a quick 5-minute video. And then I'm going to give you some of the details in our story and answer any questions that you may have about some of the things that we encountered on our kidney journey. In 2006, I woke up to go to work, and I woke up with swollen legs. I was a school counselor at the time. And I got to school and I asked the school nurse what he thought may be going on. And he said, "You need to get to the emergency room right away." And then I got to the emergency room and they said, "Your kidneys are failing." My whole world, I feel like, shut down that day. Here I was, a nursing mom. I'd just gotten back into going to work and being a school counselor, doing a job that I absolutely love. And I end up in the emergency room and they're like, "You're going to have to stop nursing. You're going to have to stop." I mean, just everything that day stopped. And so I ended up being in the hospital for 8 days. They determined that I had FSGS, focal segmental glomerulosclerosis. I had no idea what it was. I'd never heard of it again. I didn't have a family history. And so I found out that it's when a part of your kidney cells becomes scarred. I was devastated. It just happened so suddenly. Everything comes to a halt in a second. To now have to navigate through this, to figure out what FSGS was and what life would look like after that. And so because of that, I decided to quit my job, to resign from my job, to really focus on my family and my health. So once they diagnosed the FSGS, they put me on a immunosuppressant regimen. They were able to hold them at bay with medication and slowly come off of the medicine. And so I was off of medication at least for 3 years before things began to get worse. I went to see my nephrologist shortly after. They did labs and he said, "Your numbers are starting to creep back up, Miss Rouse. And if you get the slightest cold, you could die. If anything happens, you could die because your body's not in a position to fight. It's time for us to start having a conversation about potentially preparing for dialysis." I didn't want to accept that this was going to be my life connected to a machine for 12 to 13 hours a week. And having a young child at the time, I said, well, let me think about this and determine if this is something I really want to do. I wanted to still hold out on hope that something else would come through. And so I thought about it, and the next day I decided to start dialysis. When I started having kidney concerns, and I told my family, my siblings and my parents, that I would have to start dialysis. And so my sister, she's like, "Well, you need another kidney? Like, what's going on?" And I said, "Yeah, they're saying I'm going to be on dialysis and I need a kidney."
Sharron really, she's a fighter, but she just said what she was. She wasn't sad or anything. She didn't have to ask. You needed something, and if I have it, like it's yours. Like you can have it. It was really no conversation other than the questions asked, like what do I need to do? What does it involve? Like what happens? Again, we were still learning the process, so I had to tell her what we had been learning and the fact that you could live with one kidney. And she said, "Well, sure, I'll go get tested." During that time, I was really depressed. I kind of lost everything, my job. I just had a baby. My son was a year old. I was in a relationship for 8 years. It just all went away. The feeling of no job, you have a baby, you're depending on other people. My life was spiraling out of control. At that moment, I was in a really, really dark place. I really didn't have a purpose, or didn't know what my purpose was. Sharron always shined a light on me. She was in need and I needed a purpose. So I knew that it was going to be my kidney. I already knew it. Shortly after I started dialysis, we knew that my sister was a match. And it was so funny because the doctors and nurses would come in like, "Oh, you're the sisters that are the perfect match." And I'm like, "Well, what does that mean?" And she said there's 6 antigens that we look at when we're determining the level, the degree of how your kidneys are matching together. And each antigen lined up perfectly. So you're a perfect match. When the doctors kept coming in and the nurses kept saying that, it really made me believe there was a purpose. I had a purpose the whole time. Like, that had to happen. It's that day. Hi. Woo-hoo. Me moving back here, everything had to happen for it to align that way. That's what kept me going. That's what kept me waking up in the morning. That's what kept me happy. Like, this is what's happening. Since the transplant, I tell my sister all the time, like, I have my second win. I have a new lease on life, and I never want to take it for granted or even forget to tell people my story. And so that's how Kindness for Kidneys was born. It started with just a dream and a vision of wanting to do more to help others, especially in the African American community, in the minority community. That was my mission. That became my purpose. I want to do something different. I want to do something better. If someone that you love is in need, the biggest takeaway from this that I received is give it. Whether it's attention, whether it's time, whether it's love. If you have it, give it. It's free. Did Sharron save my life, or did I save hers? We saved each other.
So I wanted to share, I did some foreshadowing there, because I really wanted to include my sister, who's a huge part of my story and a huge part of why I'm able to do what that I do today, is just be able to share and encourage other families. And it's a huge part of why Kindness for Kidneys was formed, because as you know, in the African American community, in communities of color, typically we aren't having conversations about our health. And so it's so important for us to be able to have conversations and to open the door for conversations. And so by us sharing our story, it allows us to open the door for conversations, and opens the door for other families to feel safe and comfortable sharing their stories. Many times we kind of just go through life and we remain strong and we don't want anyone to pity us. And so we don't share. But what's happening is that generations that are coming behind us aren't prepared to deal with the fight. They aren't prepared to prevent it from going on in their bloodline. They're not prepared for that because we're not really talking about it. So I'm going to reshare my presentation and just kind of give you some fine details from there. And then also any questions that you have throughout the presentation, feel free to pop them in the chat, or if you want to just come off of mute, and I'm more than happy to share and answer any questions that you have, because I feel like even though I'm sharing my story today, this presentation is for you. Our goal is always to educate, encourage, and empower kidney warriors and their family, and then just the community as a whole, because this is an epidemic, and if we're not careful, it's going to continue to be one. And so it's important for us to raise our voices, just as they are at EMAT. And so I had a relatively normal childhood. There were no indications that this would happen to me at the age of 31. No indications. I went through life. I think I had a surgery at the age of 1, a hernia surgery. But other than that, just led a relatively healthy life. I'm the oldest of four children. And so when this happened to our family in 2006, it was really, we were all devastated because we really didn't have a blueprint or anyone that we knew of in our lineage to say, oh yeah, they had kidney disease, and so maybe that's why you have it. We didn't have any of that. We didn't have high blood pressure or diabetes or anything like that. So here I was thinking I was living a relatively normal life, and I had my daughter. And by then, that's when the kidney disease, 5 months after I had her, the kidney disease was diagnosed. I'd gotten up to go to work, as you saw in the video there, and noticed that I had swollen legs. And once I got to the emergency room, I was diagnosed with FSGS, kidney disease. And so I like to kind of just paint a picture because sometimes, there isn't a blueprint to show that this was bound to happen. And in my situation, I didn't know. This was just the process and going through that, as you heard in the video. And so I'm not going to go through all of it. But long story short, I ended up doing peritoneal dialysis and then transitioned to, I ended up doing hemodialysis first and then transitioning to doing peritoneal dialysis so that I could continue to work full time. As you see here in this right picture, there's a whole room full of PD boxes. And so I did my treatments at night, during the night, and I would dialyze and then get up and go to work. And that's after I transitioned from in-center. I do want to stop and pause here because many times when someone receives a kidney disease diagnosis, it impacts the entire family. It impacts you as the individual, the patient, and then anyone connected to you that is supporting you throughout the journey. And so I want to pause to just, for those that are caregivers on the call, to help you understand that when your loved one is diagnosed, you do go through the grieving process. And the reason that I held off is because I didn't want to do dialysis. And so I could have been labeled an uncompliant patient. I could have been labeled just, don't deal with Mrs. Rouse. I've seen it in dialysis centers where they're like, oh, he doesn't listen, he's uncompliant. We don't deal with him, we don't bother with him. But it's important not to count that person out. Just like I was able to come around, so can the individual, so can the family in some cases, because sometimes it could be the family that's in denial that their loved one is faced with kidney disease and dialysis. And so just wanted to put a pin in there to point that out, that many times you're going through the grieving process and your life as you know it is going to change. And so you may experience shock and grief and denial and anger and just a whole myriad of emotions. And so it's important to still surround your loved one with love if they are going through this process. And so in our journey, we had some choices to make. We had some some things that we had to deal with in the road. And my sister and I, it's not in the video, but we encountered a lot of obstacles on our road to transplantation. And I work with families a lot that are going through it. And sometimes families stop at no. They got a no from the transplant center. They went through all of the testing and all of that. And the transplant center went before the decision committee and they said, no, we're not going to clear you for surgery. And so it's important to not stop at that first no. If we had stopped, I wouldn't be probably sitting here talking and sharing this story right now. It would have been a different story. We had 4 no's before we were actually able to get to the transplant table. And the reason was because my sister's hemoglobin levels were fluctuating. And so they didn't want to put her on the operating table if they didn't feel that she was able to withstand surgery, or if in the future something happened to her. And so they kept saying, well, we don't want something to happen to her down the line. And my sister, because she felt that this was her purpose, she's like, I don't care what happens down the line. I want to do this now. I want to do this for my sister. I want to see her off dialysis. And so we kept going forward. There were plenty of times that I said, you know what, I'm on the transplant list, Shantae, don't worry about this. We'll figure this out. But she didn't stop at no. And so if there's anyone listening on the call right now or to the recording, don't stop at no. Sometimes it's just pivoting and trying another transplant center, or having another family member or friend get tested. So don't stop at no. And so we continued to journey forward. And then we did get our transplant on December 2nd of 2013 and had our 10-year anniversary this past December. And so faith was a huge part of our process. I don't know where I would have been if it weren't for faith. It took faith for me to make the decision to go on dialysis. It took faith for me to actually go and sit in that chair day after day, not really knowing what the future was going to hold. And so we went through this process, but we didn't go through it alone because of our faith in God. And so faith is taking the first step, even when you don't see the whole staircase. There are times that we're faced with obstacles in life and we don't know what it's going to look like in the end. We don't know how it's all going to pan out. And that's where faith has to come in. And so that was a huge part of our journey. We prayed a lot and just like, God, what are we supposed to be doing? Of course, there were times that we wanted to give up. There were times that we were losing hope, especially because we were constantly being told no, and we really had to fight through. But it was our faith that kept us saying, okay, let's try again. My sister had 2 bone marrow biopsies just to be able to prove that she was a viable candidate. And that's how gung-ho she was. And I clearly understand that not everyone is going to be as gung-ho and be a hero like my sister. But you just never know. You never know. I've heard of people stepping forward for people that they didn't even know. And so you just never know. And that's where your faith has to come in. That's where your faith, where things just don't look possible at all. But because of your faith, you're able to push through and say, I know that something is going to come through for me. You must be the change you wish to see in the world. And so this was where my mindset. And so I was going through this grieving process. I decided, okay, let me go ahead and start dialysis and let me do this. And I don't think at that time I realized that me not going on dialysis meant that I was choosing to die. I don't think I ever put 2 and 2 together until after the fact. Like, Sharron, you were almost contemplating death. And so, after the words, I'm like, wow, if I had decided not to go on dialysis, I wouldn't be here. And so it was in that transformation of my mindset that I was able to make the decision. For one, I really had prayed that night and had resolved the fact that this was happening in my life. And if I didn't do something about it, I wasn't going to be around for my daughter and for my family. And so in that moment, it really was a mind shift change. Nothing changed around me as far as my physical circumstances, but my mindset went from, why is this happening to me, to, okay, this is happening and this is what I need to do. This is how I need to respond. And so you must be the change that you wish to see in the world. And that's from Mahatma Gandhi. So this takes me into the formation of Kindness for Kidneys. But just based on our journey, when I first started dialysis, the day that I walked into the dialysis center, I was just, there was so many emotions that I felt in that moment. I had a renewed sense of purpose. Like, I know I'm coming through this process for a reason. But when I walked in, I just see everyone sitting around in their chairs and getting treatment, and you hear machines, and it's a distinct smell because of the cleaning and just all of the stuff that goes with it. I had an epiphany that day. And when I walked in, I just felt like, oh my goodness, I'm looking around. I was one of the younger ones in the facility, of course. But I was looking around and I'm like, why aren't we having conversations about this? Like, I don't think people really understand what goes on in these dialysis centers. And it's just all these people sitting around, they're of all walks of life and just coming from different circumstances, and we're all coming to this place for the same reason. And it just really bothered me that I didn't know more about it before starting. I almost felt embarrassed. Like, why didn't I know more about this? Why didn't I know about dialysis, and that people actually come here? And you hear a lot about cancer and cancer treatments and chemo, and I knew more about that than I did kidney disease and dialysis. And so it really bothered me that here I was on dialysis myself, and I had never really learned about it or knew about it or even heard about it in the community or even any resources in the community. And so that's where Kindness for Kidneys was born. I would sit in the dialysis chair and just look around and wonder what I could do to be the change for myself and for other families. And many times you do feel lonely going through the process. You walk into these facilities, you sit down for treatment, you're going through these things. Many times you're sitting there alone. There are no family members there to support you unless you get permission to have them there with you. So you have a lot of time to think. And this was one of the things that I would think about is what can I do to be a part of this change? What can I do to raise awareness so that I'm not sitting next to someone that's telling me, oh, my uncle was on dialysis, my mother was on dialysis, now I'm on dialysis. It's like, when are we going to break these cycles in our community? Why is it that we have these dialysis centers on every corner and we are not saying anything? And so that was the premise behind starting Kindness for Kidneys, was really just to get the word out. My sister and I had encountered so many obstacles in our journey that we wanted to be able to share with others. We wanted to be able to say, hey, don't stop with the first no. We had to go through 4 different no's before we could get our actual transplant date. And in some of those no's, we had actually gone through the pre-op and everything and had the appointment scheduled. It's ready to get to the hospital, only to get a call to say, well, the team has decided not so. And so we really wanted to start to raise awareness. When I started Kindness for Kidneys, I really had no idea what we were going to do. I just know I wanted to help. And you could say I probably just jumped out there nose first, just nose dived into this, but I just knew I wanted to help. And so I started and then formed a 501c3, and we launched on my sister and I's 5-year kidney anniversary, which was December 2nd of 2018. And here we are. We made the official announcement at a kidney walk that we were going to have this launch. And then this was a picture of our team at the launch and those that supported us in really carrying the launch out. And so what do we do at Kindness for Kidneys? I explained that we educate, encourage, and empower kidney warriors and their families. But what do we do? What have we done the last 6 years? And so the first thing that we did, we started out at the launch, let me back up a little bit. We asked everyone to bring items. We gave a list of items, things that I knew that dialysis warriors use during their treatment. So puzzles and neck pillows and blankets and just all kind of things that people use when they're going to dialysis, earphones, and just all of those things. And we collected them at the launch, and we took them to my dialysis center in care packages during the Christmas holiday, and we sang Christmas carols. And so this is a picture of us here singing at one of the facilities, but of course this was before COVID. This was in 2018. And so it was really important for me to just share some love and bring some holiday cheer. As I mentioned to you, many times you feel very lonely, and the holiday time especially, it's already a reflective time for everyone. Most people experience heartache because they've lost a loved one, or maybe they're going through a divorce and their family dinner table does not look the same way. And so there's a lot of time for reflection during the holiday. Many times people are stopping and sitting at a table with family members, and it could trigger some things. But we still go and deliver care packages each year. And like I said, we're up to 12 facilities, and we also service Children's Hospital in DC. And so that's probably my favorite initiative that we do is going to just spread some holiday cheer, stepping outside of ourselves. We do participate in kidney walks, and so you can see us at one of the kidney walks there. In the heart of COVID, we started support groups, and we had already been putting the legs into motion prior to COVID. And we had our first meeting here in the Maryland area at Oxon Hill Libraries, our first in-person meeting. It took place on March 8th, 2020. And as you know, what happened the following week, and we were just like, oh my gosh, it was a great meeting. It was standing room only in our support group meeting. And so we were very excited because it was something that we all wanted in this area. I have a wonderful support group committee, and we were so excited that, oh, wow, we finally get to have this for the southern area of our state. And then we have the first meeting and COVID hit. But it ended up being a blessing in disguise. And so now we host support group meetings once a month on the second Sunday of every month. And we do it virtually, and people are able to tune in from all over, from Florida, from Arizona. And so it's just always a time for us to come together and encourage each other and share information. If we're going to be a part of the change, it's important for us to have the appropriate information. And so we have guest speakers come on to share the resources that are out there. And then from there, we charge the participants that come to be able to go out to their circle of influence to continue to raise awareness and to continue to be a voice for those in our community. We also host kidney conversations. And so kidney conversations are informal conversations that we host for families. And so typically, depending on where the family lives, our last session that we did a few years ago was actually on Zoom because one, it was during COVID, and then the family primarily lived in North Carolina. But my sister and I, what we do is we get on, it's a very informal, relaxed setting, and we talk to families about our story and then answer any questions that they have. And many times it's taking the burden off of the kidney warrior to have to explain to their entire family what's going on and what's involved in living kidney donation, should anyone be interested. And so we just get on, we share our story, we talk about, hey, these are some of the things your loved one is going through with dialysis. I talk about my experiences, my mental experiences with going through the grieving process and all of that. And sometimes just hearing it from an outside source, it really does ease the burden for the kidney warrior and even for their families in some cases. And so we do host kidney conversations for families that requested, that say, hey, I've tried to explain to my family what's going on. Some of them are listening. Some of them still have questions. Can you all just host a meeting for us, a kidney conversation for us? And we do that. And sometimes it's telephonic. I've talked to families on phones. We've done Zoom meetings. So it's whatever the family wants. We are open to doing those in person as well, but we always defer to whatever the family's comfort level is. And so that's another initiative that we do. One more thing that I want to point out is down here in the left-hand corner, we during COVID, I partnered with another organization, the Marian Lucas Foundation, and we provided lunch to dialysis healthcare workers. One of the other initiatives that we, before I get into some tips, because we're coming on the tail end of the presentation, one of the other things that we recently started, thanks to a grant here in our area, was education program. We kicked off the Kindness for Kidneys education program. And our education program is a 5-week interactive educational experience that we provide to dialysis warriors and their families. And I do have some kidney warriors on here that can attest to the program that they went through it. But basically what we wanted to do is provide tangible tips and tangible things that they could take beyond what they learned in the 5 sessions to be able to continue on their kidney journey. And so the sessions include a mental health session, we have a nutrition and meal prep session, we have a goal setting session, we have a preparing for transplantation session, and we have breathing exercises session. So basically the goal of the 5 weeks is to put information in their hands and also connect them to resources that are right here in our community. Many times we're quick to put education in patients' hands, but what do we do from there? How do they take that information and actually apply it to their lives? And so we connect them with resources beyond just our 5 weeks. We're there with them to support them for 5 weeks, but beyond that, we connect them and say, hey, here's a mental health provider here right in our area that you can continue services with. Here's the nutrition and meal prep person who's a 2-time kidney transplant recipient herself, that you can take advantage of some meals that she cooks. And so that's the goal of the program. And it's not just for kidney warriors, it's also for their families. And so they can invite care partners to participate. And then at the end of them, at the sessions, if they attend at least 3 out of the 5, they get a nice Kindness for Kidneys gift box. I want to end tonight with just some tips for kidney warriors and caregivers. Again, many times we feel like we're going through this alone. And so it's so important for us to walk through this walk together. We are in this together. And the only way that we're going to change the narrative and see innovation in this space is if we keep talking about it, if we keep raising our voices, if we keep raising awareness. So I just want to leave you with 10 tips. I'm glad you asked that question, Ms. Michaela, because I saw a spelling error on here. I was able to go back and change it. So thank you for giving me some time to do that. But I want to leave you with 10 tips. The first one is connect with other kidney warriors. Anytime you're going through difficult circumstances in life in general, whether it's kidney disease or anything, the first thing that we tend to do is isolate ourselves from others. We don't want to talk about it. We don't want to be around people. But most of the time, that's what we need. We were never designed to live an isolated life. We weren't created for that. And so it's so important to connect with other people. You don't have to be a kidney warrior and walk through this journey by yourself. You don't have to be a caregiver and walk through this journey by yourself. And so even if maybe you may not have a close family or you may not have a close circle of friends, there's so many kidney groups. You have EMAT here, you have Kindness for Kidneys. There's so many groups, even on Facebook, where you could connect with other people. And so it's so important to connect. Connection is key and just helping you feel better. There are going to be a lot of days that you just don't feel like it. You just don't feel like going on. But you hear someone else's story and you can get inspired by that. You connect with another kidney warrior and just say, hey, today was a bad day. I just need to talk to someone. And that's what connection brings. It gives you that energy, it gives you that empowerment that you need to continue in your journey. The next thing is to take it day by day. Many times we're like, oh my gosh, I got to get a transplant. I got to do this. I got to, and it becomes overwhelming. It is a marathon to walk through the kidney journey, both as the caregiver and as the kidney warrior. And so look at it as just that, a marathon. It's not something that next week we're going to arrive and we have everything we need and everything is in place. It really is a journey. And so sometimes you have to take it day by day. And as my sister always says, sometimes I have to take it moment by moment. Sometimes it's just too hard to even think about the full day. I need to take it moment by moment. And so whatever you discern you need to do in that moment, do that. You know, maybe look, I just need a moment. I just need to kind of sit with my thoughts and just think, changed my thoughts on some things. And sometimes it's just taking it day by day. What can I accomplish today? What is it that I have within my control that I could do today? The third one is accept help. Accept help. Again, that's another one, especially in our community. We're like, we're just going to do this. We go into survival mode and we don't really reach out for help. There are things that people could help us with that we don't communicate that need to. And so it's important to ask for help and communicate consistently with your doctors. I can't tell you the number of lessons I learned during my kidney journey that I probably could have avoided had I asked the right questions or had I even asked questions at all. My first hospital stay, I found myself just doing whatever the doctors prescribed for me to do. And it took a nurse coming in one night to ask me, why are you taking heparin? And I was embarrassed because I said, I didn't know I was taking heparin. I was so embarrassed that she came in to ask me this. And I just knew I was in there. It was kind of my first time in the hospital. This was the initial diagnosis. So I just thought I was supposed to do whatever they told me and I would feel better and be able to go home. And so it wasn't until she came in to say, no, you don't need to take heparin. You're up and walking, your circulation is fine. Don't take it again. And so it woke me up that night to the important person that needed to be in the driver's seat for my health, and that was me. And not that I wouldn't listen to the doctors, but I had to change my mindset that this is a partnership. With your lived experience and their expertise, you discuss what's best for you and come to a resolve that's best for you. And so absolutely respect your doctor and what they're saying, but also do your research. Also ask around. Also get a second or third opinion if you need to. And so that night in the hospital really changed my advocacy journey because from that point on, I was asking questions. I was probably getting on their nerves because I was asking a lot of questions. What is this for? Why am I being prescribed it? What can I expect as far as side effects? Is it going to interact with any other medications that you're prescribing me? And then I would go and do my own research as well. And so we want to make sure we're communicating consistently. Things change. Your health may change over time. And so what worked in the beginning may not work midway through the journey. And so it's important to have those conversations. And so be open to new methods of technology. There are innovations that are coming out that have come out for kidney warriors, for just different things. I mean, you think about just our world, there's things for weight loss now that more people can take advantage of. And so sometimes it's important to just be open to new methods of doing things. For some people that may be going in center, maybe trying home therapy, whether it's home hemo or peritoneal, may be an option for you. But you have to be open to consider those things. Sometimes we get settled in our way of doing things and we don't want to even explore what other options are available to us. This one is important. Watch out for signs of depression and don't delay getting professional help for you and or your loved one. And so as I said, like I said, I was going through the grieving process in my initial diagnosis. And sometimes we don't even realize we're going through some of these emotional and mental concerns. And so just watch out for some of those signs, like the isolating, I don't want to get up and do anything anymore. Look for signs of those things and determine if you think you may need to get some professional help. And I know in our community, that's another thing that can be taboo, that we don't want to go and get professional help, but it does help. It does help. And so you want to just watch out for those signs, because you don't want to go into a deeper depression when you could have taken care of it early on. And so you may have to seek beyond even your social worker and your dialysis center. You may have to seek outside professional help to help you navigate through this journey. Again, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. Take breaks often. Sometimes there's so much going on in our world, so much going on in our daily lives, that we just need a break. A social media break. We might need just a day off from work, a mental health day. And so be in tune to that. When do I need to just take a break? When do I need to step away from all of the noise to really be able to focus on what's going on in my life and what I need to do? Number 8, keep your medical information and legal documents organized. I can't tell you the number of people have no idea what medication their loved ones take. They don't have a list. Sometimes even the patient doesn't even have that information. And so when something happens, your family members are left to scramble around and figure things out. But if we have these things already organized and they know where they are, we don't have to go through the extra stress that we would already be going through as a result of something happening to our loved one. So it's important to keep the medical information, legal documents. Always let your loved ones or whoever your care partners know what you are taking, the dosage. You know, if something, God forbid, happens, they'll be able to speak to, okay, this is what they were taking. I knew they started this new medication yesterday. This could be going on. And so you want to make sure that all of that information is organized so that your family members can better support you. Create an exercise plan. And so for exercise, this could look different for everyone. For some people, it could be walking around in their basement. For others, it could be just lifting your arms while you're sitting at your desk, or while you're on, just whatever that looks like for you. You want to make sure you create a plan and try to stick to it. Movement is a form of medicine. And so the more sedentary we are, the more we need other kind of medications to keep other things moving. And so to the extent that you can, you want to create an exercise plan. And like I said, for some, it may be doing exercises sitting in a chair. For others, it may be walking around your neighborhood or in the park. And so you just want to create a plan to keep moving. That's another area that aids in depression, is when you're sedentary and you're not moving your body. Research has shown and evidence has shown that when you are moving, you are activating endorphins and all kinds of happy hormones to help you. And so you just want to make sure that you exercise. And then the last thing is, give yourself credit for doing the best that you can. We are so hard on ourselves sometimes, and we're just like, I don't do this right, and I don't do that right, and I'm the reason I'm here in this dialysis chair, and I'm the reason I was diagnosed with kidney disease. And even if that is the case, give yourself credit for making a decision to still move forward in life. Give yourself credit for even making the decision to change the course of your life, because you deserve it. And so I want to leave you with those things, some of those tips I got from the Caregiver Action Network. And so it's here on the PowerPoint slide for anybody that may want to take advantage of it. But I just wanted to leave you with those tips, and also leave you with this last quote. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that's an African proverb. And so we are in this together. I want to thank you, Ms. Shirley, for allowing me to be a part of this wonderful, wonderful month of just shining a light on kidney disease. And I just want to encourage you that are here on the call, and those that may listen to the recording, let's continue in this fight together. Let's stick together. We can do this together. No one should be out on an island of their own trying to navigate through their kidney journey. We were meant to do life together.